You know that classic survival game moment. Your backpack is full, you hear zombies approaching, and you need to make a split-second decision. To make room for a can of beans or some extra ammo, you drop that electronic component or piece of scrap that looks like junk. I can't even count how many times I did that in HumanitZ right at the beginning. But the problem is, hours later, when you finally decide to upgrade your base or fix a vehicle, despair hits as you realize the item you discarded was exactly what you needed. That's why today we're going to take a look at 10 items you're probably leaving behind right now, having no clue they are true rarities. So stick with me because the video is about to start. The car battery is one of the most underestimated items in all of HumanitZ. In my first few hours of the game, I would pass by wrecked cars, see that heavy battery on the ground, and just leave it behind. After all, it weighs a ton, takes up valuable inventory space, and you think, oh, I'll get it later. Spoiler, you won't go back and you will bitterly regret it. The problem is that most people see the car battery as a vehicle item and nothing more, but it goes far beyond that. You need it to activate the radio tower, and without the tower running, forget about airdrops, which are one of the best sources of loot in the game. And here's the cruel detail. The tower battery will drain over time, so you'll need replacements, not just a one-time thing. Outside of the tower, it's essential for setting up solar power systems at your base, and for the entire lighting structure you'll want to build when things start to escalate. Without power, your base is just four walls in the dark, and believe me, you'll want light when the Zeeks start appearing in hordes in the middle of the night. There are also quests that directly depend on this item, so keeping a few is always the right call. My honest advice, whenever you see a car battery, take it. Doesn't matter where it is, doesn't matter how much it's weighing down your inventory, wrecked cars, garages, and auto parts stores are the right places to look. Try to keep at least 2 or 3 stored at your base, especially since you can recharge weak ones using the battery charger with a generator, so you never have to discard one completely. This item will save your run more than any weapon you find. Have you ever opened a jar of jam in HumanitZ, eaten that delicious strawberry goodness, and tossed the glass jar away without a second thought? I did that countless times in my early days of the game, until I realized I was making a rookie mistake that costs dearly in the struggle for survival. These seemingly useless jars are in fact valuable resources that many players underestimate. What many don't know is that every glass jar you save after consuming a jar of jam is a vital component for crafting duct tape, that life-saving adhesive used to repair weapons and equipment. Without it, you're at the mercy of luck to find glue or murky water to boil, a tedious process that consumes precious time, better spent exploring or fighting zombies. According to the HumanitZ wiki, the jar of jam is directly used at the workbench to create duct tape, proving it's not just food, but essential survival material. When you discard these jars, you're throwing away not just an item, but hours of easier gameplay. Imagine being in the middle of a horde, your axe breaking, and realizing you don't even have a piece of tape to fix it because you threw away every jar you found in those abandoned houses. Discussions in the HumanitZ community show that the lack of easy access to materials like glass jars creates a cruel imbalance, especially in multiplayer, where every character needs their own repairs. In my next playthrough, I started checking every kitchen and workbench before leaving a building, hoarding every empty jar as if it were ammo. This small change transformed my experience. I went from constantly hunting for resources to having a reliable stockpile to keep my hammer and knife sharp, giving me the confidence to face bigger challenges. So, next time you see a jar of jam, remember, enjoy the jam, but cherish the jar. Let me tell you something I learned the hard way in HumanitZ. There's an item that looks like junk on your screen, but is actually worth more than any rare weapon you've ever found. I'm talking about electronic components, one of those items you look at, don't know what to do with, and simply toss to free up inventory space. I've done it. You've probably done it too. And we only realize the mistake when we desperately need them in the middle of base building. They appear in very specific places with a frustrating frequency. Inside computers in houses and offices, and sometimes under the hoods of abandoned cars scattered across the map. Not every computer and not every car will have these components. When you pop a hood or dismantle a computer and see this item there, celebrate. because luck has smiled upon you in that moment. The game doesn't warn you that it's rare. There's no flashing red asterisk on the screen. It just sits there quietly, waiting for you to ignore it. Their importance is massive once you start understanding how the game truly works. Need to fix the radio tower to unlock airdrops? An electronic component is a mandatory material. Want to build electric defenses at your base so you don't have to rely only on wooden walls? Electronic components. Advanced power systems, base tech, anything with a wire or circuit in HumanitZ goes through this item at some point. Without them, your base stays stuck at the basics forever. So the tip is simple and direct. Every time you see an electronic component, take it. It doesn't matter if your inventory is almost full. Reorganize something. It doesn't matter if you don't know what it's for yet. You will soon, and you'll thank your past self for saving it. Keep a small box at your base just for this. Separate them. Accumulate them, because reaching the electrical construction phase and being without this item is one of the most frustrating feelings this game can give you. Let me tell you something you've probably done without even realizing it was a mistake. You're scavenging a warehouse, a gun store, or even a zombie's pocket, and that tiny item called gun parts pops up, and you toss it immediately. Without a second thought. After all, you already have a good gun in hand and you're full of ammo, so why keep that loose part, right? Well, I've done that too, and it was exactly when I needed a gun repair kit that I understood the scale of my mistake. The reality is that gun parts are one of the most silently rare items in HumanitZ. They don't appear with that epic item aura, they don't glow, and they don't have an explicit rarity warning. They arrive discreetly, and you dismiss them as easily as a can of expired food. But without them, you literally cannot craft a gun repair kit, which is exactly the item that will save your favorite weapon's life when it's on the verge of collapsing. No repair, no gun. It's that simple. And it goes beyond repairs. Gun parts are part of the crafting chain for advanced ammo and high-level weapon upgrades. Those improvements that make a real difference when you're facing larger hordes or exploring more dangerous zones. In other words, you're not just discarding a generic part, you're throwing away the main ingredient for some of the most important recipes in the game. It's like throwing away the flour for a cake and then complaining you can't bake anything. So the next time you see gun parts on your screen, stop everything and save them. Create an exclusive box at your base just for them, because I guarantee that the day you need to craft a gun repair kit with your best gun at half durability, you'll be glad you kept every single one. Don't underestimate what looks useless. In HumanitZ, the most discreet items are often the ones that keep you alive the longest. There's a category of item in HumanitZ that almost everyone throws away without thinking: the watch and the compass. They're small, they look decorative, and when your inventory is full of food, ammo, and vehicle parts, these two are the first to go in the trash. I did it, you probably did too, and together, they are easy money that you simply left on the ground. The thing is, they aren't useless. They are trade items. Traders pay a decent price for them, especially considering how little they weigh, which is practically nothing. You won't get rich selling watches and compasses. It's not like getting a gas mask or a pack of cigarettes, which are the trade value champions. But they are a perfect addition for when you're selling a batch of items and want to squeeze every cent out of your deal with the merchant. What makes these items even more interesting is exactly how light they are. When you're on a long exploration and your inventory is at its limit, a watch in your pocket won't slow you down at all, but it will yield extra cash when it's time to restock supplies. Think of them as small coins scattered across the map. Individually, they seem like little, but you gather 3 or 4 and you already have a relevant trade in your hands. So the advice is simple: don't discard them. Keep 1 or 2 whenever you find them, put them in a corner of your base or a container reserved for sale items, and next time you go to the trader, take them along. They won't change your run, but they will smooth over those moments when you need resources and your pockets are empty. Small item, small but consistent impact, and consistency in HumanitZ is what separates those who survive from those who start from scratch all the time. If there's an item that perfectly summarizes the idea of money in your pocket with no weight, it's cigarettes. It's the kind of thing you find during exploration, look at for half a second, and discard because it seems to have no use in the post-apocalyptic world. But then you go to the trader for the first time empty-handed trying to buy ammo, and someone tells you about cigarettes, and you spend the next 10 minutes thinking about how many you threw away. Cigarettes are at the top of the game's trade item hierarchy. They are worth considerably more than watches and compasses when negotiating with NPCs, and the reason makes total sense within the game's logic. In a collapse of civilization, vices still hold value. Fuel, food, and cigarettes are the three unofficial currencies of any survival scenario, and HumanitZ respects that with its trading mechanics. What makes them even more valuable is the combination of practically zero weight and space. You can be carrying a completely full inventory of heavy loot, car parts, tools, and food, and still shove a few packs of cigarettes into the available corners without feeling any difference. It's exactly this kind of item that turns a regular exploration into a profitable one just because you were paying attention. Every time you see a cigarette on the ground, in a drawer, or on a shelf, take it. Don't think, don't question. Store them in a specific container at your base for trade items, and when you head to the merchant, bring the whole batch. Over time, you'll realize that cigarettes are responsible for a very relevant slice of your economy, and best of all, you didn't sacrifice any space or weight to carry them. The gas mask is probably the item that most divides HumanitZ players into two categories: those who understand the game and those who haven't reached the toxic zones yet. At first, it seems like just another optional piece of protective gear, the kind of thing you keep just in case and never actually use. Then you hear about military crates, the best loot in the game concentrated in a single place, and suddenly that mask you discarded becomes the most important item you ever ignored. Toxic zones in HumanitZ aren't just hazard areas, they are the home of the game's best content. Airdrops, military crates, rare items you simply don't find anywhere else with the same consistency. But the game is brutal here. Without a complete gas mask and a working filter, you take constant damage just by breathing the air. It doesn't matter how much food or medicine you're carrying, the zone will wear you down until you leave or die. And here is the detail most people forget. The mask alone isn't enough. You need working filters. They degrade with use, so entering a toxic zone with a filter near its end is essentially the same as entering with no mask at all. Whenever you find extra filters, save them. Whenever you find a spare mask, save it too, because besides personal use, gas masks have some of the best trade values with merchants in the entire game, standing side by side with cigarettes at the top of the sales hierarchy. The advice here is never to leave a gas mask on the ground, regardless of its condition. Damaged masks still have resale value, and masks in good condition are practically mandatory if you want to truly progress. Keep a good one at your base for personal use, keep at least 2 filters reserved with it, and sell the excess. Whoever controls access to the toxic zones controls the best loot on the server, and it all starts with that mask you almost threw away. There is a resource that is practically invisible to those who don't know what they're looking for, and that resource is saltpeter. You pass by those rocks with white stripes during exploration, pay them no mind, and keep walking toward some house or container. Meanwhile, the most important ingredient for your long-term survival is literally on the ground waiting for someone to pay attention. Saltpeter is the main ingredient for crafting gunpowder, and gunpowder is at the heart of practically all the ammo you can craft in the game. This means that ignoring this resource early on doesn't hurt you immediately, but down the road when bullet loot starts to get scarce and zombies keep appearing in industrial quantities, you're going to feel that absence very painfully. Relying on finding ready-made ammo on the map has an expiration date, and saltpeter is the answer for when that time runs out. What makes it even more critical is that it isn't just anywhere. You need to identify the right rocks, the ones with the characteristic white stripes, and mine specifically from them. Not every mining node on the map will give you saltpeter, so when you find a source, it's worth making a mental note or even revisiting the site regularly to keep your stockpile healthy. The right mindset with saltpeter is to treat it as a mandatory farm, not a resource you pick up when you have spare time. Whenever you pass near a rock with white stripes, stop and mine. Save the stock, and when you have enough gunpowder, convert it into ammo before you actually need it. The people who never run out of bullets in humanity aren't necessarily the ones who find the most loot. They are the ones who learned to produce their own supply, and it all starts with that rock you walked right past. There is an item in HumanitZ that is so easy to ignore it doesn't even seem like it has any importance. The microphone. You find that object in a warehouse, on a hardware store shelf, or maybe inside a cluttered computer, and your immediate instinct is to leave it behind. After all, what use is a microphone at the end of the world? The answer is, for everything you'll need to do the moment Main Quest 2 appears on your screen. The mission, Can You Hear Me, is one of the game's main quests, and the microphone is the central item to complete it. Without it, you simply get stuck. There's no shortcut, no substitute, and no way to craft it instead. It's this specific item, or you'll have to scour every warehouse and hardware store on the map hoping the RNG smiles on you. And the whole community already knows that its spawn rate is frustrating enough to cause constant complaints among players. Beyond the quest, it is part of building the radio at your base, which is the structure that activates airdrops, which in turn are the best source of high-level loot the game has. So the microphone is directly linked to a progression chain that goes far beyond a single mission. It's a small item with big consequences, and the spawn locations are very specific. Warehouses, hardware stores, storage units, and computers scattered across the map. The lesson here is the same one the game tries to teach you several times in different ways. Never judge an item by its appearance. Every time you enter a warehouse or electronics store, check everything before leaving. If you find a microphone, put it in your inventory without question and save it at the base. You'll reach Main Quest 2 at some point, and when you do, you'll really want to be looking at that carefully stored item instead of heading back to an area you already cleared of zombies a week ago. There is a resource that is literally everywhere from the first minutes of the game, and that almost every early game player completely ignores: rags. You enter a house, find an old torn shirt, maybe a coat on a zombie's body, and you either wear it because it looks useful or discard it because it looks like trash. Neither option is the right one, and this silent decision will cost you dearly later when you need to repair something and don't have the game's most basic material on hand. The mechanic most people don't discover early enough is that you can right-click any clothing in your inventory and scrap it to extract rags. That useless shirt becomes a real resource in seconds. And these rags are the base ingredient for crafting bandages, which would be reason enough to keep them, but their most important use is as a component for duct tape, which is made with oil, a glass jar, and rags. Duct tape is probably the most used repair item in the entire game. The classic problem is exactly this. The player spends the first few hours discarding clothes, doesn't accumulate rags, and when the time comes to repair equipment, build items, or handle an emergency, they have no duct tape and don't know why they can't progress. Ready-made duct tape as loot is rare enough that you shouldn't depend on finding it on the map. Those who produce their own never get stuck. Those who depend on occasional loot will be left waiting. The mindset shift is simple but powerful. Every piece of clothing you find and aren't going to use, scrap it. There is no useless clothing in HumanitZ. There is only clothing that hasn't become a rag yet. Accumulate them, keep a stock at the base, and whenever you have oil and glass jars available, convert them into duct tape before you need it. It's one of those systems that seems too small to matter until the moment it matters a lot, and then you'll remember all those clothes you threw away without thinking.